Death Metal Hails, it's time to talk about the new Asphyx album I already mentioned previously in one of my previews. This one is called Necroceros, or could we say Necroceros, zero meaning zero in Spanish. That's so much about language learning sessions. This one is the 10th full album by the Asphyx death metal legends. Now the story of the band is rather curious, or more like, well, I guess story. His story doesn't really matter which way we want to put it, because there has been some changes, some hiatus phases with the band, but the band always keeps coming back. No matter what happens, Asphyx is always there in one form or another, and luckily so, because the quality seems to be very, very consistent, and especially the later years, the band has proven that you really can't kill an immortal beast. Martin van Drunen doing the classic growled vocals, and the rest of the guy making sure that the bones and muscles are still right there. Now, those who don't know what Asphyx is all about, well, we could say, to kind of sum it up, it's death metal with very, very classic take, but mostly versus the more speedy bands. This is all about mid-tempo and slower parts. If that rings a bell to you in the veins of bands like Bolt Thrower, you are very much right there. These are exactly the bands that were operating roughly at the same time, but unlike Bolt Thrower, Asphyx really had those bumps along the career. That is what you're about to see here right on the Metal Archive site. That is from 1987. You know, we're talking about old school here, until 1996. The band was going on as Asphyx, and during that time, many of what are later on known as classic death metal albums came to be. I mean, look at the list. From 1991 to 1996, you know, 5 different albums. That is more, or roughly the same amount the band has since then put out. That is in 21 years, or more like almost 25 years. But then the band changed to Soulburn for a few years, which is then again another quality band and still active, by the way. So it was kind of like weird thing, you know. There was Asphyx, then it was Soulburn, then it was back to Asphyx, and nowadays we also have Soulburn. Got it. And the funny thing is, they're both operating roughly in the same fields. Well, Soulburn is technically more a blend of death, doom, and black metal, but mostly death metal. And Asphyx is also mostly death metal, but I guess it's fair to call them death doom in some ways. Both bands have the habit of, and skill more than that, of operating in the more like mid-tempo and slow-tempo parts, where that doom thing reference comes from. Anyway, both are operating and they're both good, so we're lucky to have them both. Right. So, quick recap to 2021, and here we have Necroceros. We have the other albums relatively high scores, so that should you give a little bit of indication that people overall like Asphyx. But we're not going to talk about the other bands or other releases. Obviously, that belongs to whole different videos. We're going to talk about Necroceros, which is 50 minutes of old school death metal. Very, very basic, very, very heavy. Now, my first initial spin of the album was listening to digital promo, and then that's when I was convinced that, hey, Century Media, here is the email, I want to review the new Asphyx album, can you get me a copy? They were like, yes sir, we can. And here we are, like a week later, after the album came out, that is, we have the album that actually arrived today. So I was giving it the multiple spins one after another before doing this review video, after listening to the album back then, like a month ago on digital copy. And very, very much I am convinced now after a few more spins that this is one of the best death metal albums for a while. I mean, it's very old school, it's very heavy, it's very back to basics, and that's why I like it. There is no bullshit, there is no gimmicks, there is nothing modern about it. It's more about like, hey, Bolt Thrower is dead, why don't we do just another Bolt Thrower-ish album? I mean, that's what Asphyx does, and that's what we hope that Bolt Thrower would be doing, but they are not here anymore. So, old school death metal, kind of a slow, kind of a mid-tempo, you know, they have their faster parts, but only in terms of Asphyx. I mean, it's not like they're one of those speedy monster, technical-oriented death metal bands doing the modern stuff, and you're like, ADHD, beep, 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 speed alert. More like, dun, 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 Panzerwagens. Yeah, that's what we do with Asphyx. It's like this huge war machine that it's not about speed. It's not the speedboat, speed bike. You know, a fucking pilot doing some, I don't know, fighter jet. It's Panzerwagen that it's immune to all these other weaponry, right? So much armor on it, so much weight, so much pressure, so much firepower. It's gonna blast you away. Got it. That's what makes this album Necroceros. I don't know why I have the Spanish habit with it. But that's what we have here, and that's it. What is so much likable with the album. You know, it has mostly some basic length songs, and that is good. You know, 4, 3, 5 minutes even work like a charm with this kind of music. You don't need more repetition like that. And then we have a couple of longer ones, but it's just like a seasoning on this food, delicacy, dinner, whatever. The thing here is, this is a strong album, but it's more like back to basics than anything else. So those who were expecting exactly that are now rewarded. Those who want something modern, go look elsewhere. That is it. In my opinion, you should totally give Asphyx a listen and a look and get it in a physical format. That's just me. Anyway, give it a listen, and I hope you like it. Should you have comments, questions, put them on the comments box below, and I will get back to you. Cheers.